What if we tell you that the famous Western multinational companies are doing something illegal in Africa? Well, it can be hard to be, especially considering that Western companies are very good at covering their tracks. Yet, there have been reports that are exposing what these companies are doing in Africa, going beyond just breaking laws. Despite this, the media seems deaf and blind, reporting nothing about it. Well, that's because it has been paid to stay silent and try even covering those reports. So, what explosives do these reports reveal about the covert actions of Western multinational companies in Africa? Let's find out. West has not missed a single chance of exploiting Africa. And what's surprising in today's world is the fact that this legacy of exploitation has continued. And this time, the target is Congo. But why is exploitation not ending even when the Western nations keep on talking about human rights? Does this have nothing to do with human rights violations? The Democratic Republic of Congo bears the heavy burden of a tumultuous history marked by the shackles of colonialism and the haunting echoes of slavery. Even today, the nation struggles with the consequences of foreign exploitation perpetuated by multinational corporations, predominantly from the West. This exploitation, which encompasses the plundering of minerals and the exploitation of its people, has cast a long shadow over the DRC, leaving behind a legacy of systemic corruption and persistent insecurity. But to understand why Congo is subject to Western explanation, we must know its historical context. The DRC's current challenges can be traced back to European colonialism. Belgium's King Leopold II brutally colonized the region in the late 19th century, turning it into his fiefdom known as the Congo Free State. The Congolese people were subjected to unimaginable horrors, including forced labor, mass killings, and the ruthless extraction of rubber and ivory. The scars of this dark chapter in history still linger as the nation grapples with the enduring consequences of exploitation. One of the most significant aspects of the ongoing exploitation in the DRC is the relentless pursuit of its abundant mineral wealth. The nation is endowed with valuable minerals, including coltan, cobalt, and gold, crucial components in manufacturing, electronics, and other modern technologies. Western multinational corporations, driven by insatiable demand for these resources, often exploit legal loopholes and engage in unethical practices to extract minerals at the expense of the Congolese people. The extraction process often involves child labor and hazardous working conditions, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and vulnerability. These corporations, in pursuit of profit, contribute to the perpetuation of a neo-colonial relationship that leaves the DRC economically marginalized and politically unstable. In addition to plundering its natural resources, the DRC faces the exploitation of its people on a profound scale. Armed conflict and the presence of various militias exacerbate the challenges, leading to displacement, sexual violence, and widespread human rights abuses. The manipulation of ethnic tensions by external actors further fuels the flames of internal strife, creating a volatile environment that undermines the nation's social fabric. The legacy of exploitation in the DRC is also deeply intertwined with systemic corruption. The proceeds from the lucrative mineral trade often line the pockets of corrupt officials, perpetuating a cycle of poverty for the majority of the population. The lack of transparency and accountability in governance further hampers the nation's ability to break free from exploitation. Addressing the plight of the DRC requires a concerted effort on both national and international levels. Western governments, multinational corporations, and global organizations must take responsibility for their roles in perpetuating the exploitation of the nation. Calls for fair trade practices, ethical mineral sourcing, and sustainable development initiatives have gained momentum, but concrete action is necessary to bring about lasting change. The treatment Congo people are facing is brutal, so how does this impact the people there? The relentless exploitation of the Democratic Republic of Congo extends far beyond the plundering of its resources and the degradation of its environment. The human toll exacted by this exploitation paints a grim picture, positioning the nation as one of the most challenging places for women and children to thrive. From pervasive poverty to widespread displacement and economic downturns, the consequences of exploitation cast a long shadow over the lives of the Congolese people. particularly those in rural areas. The exploitation of the DRC manifests most acutely in the insidious grip of poverty that engulfs its citizens. The economic gains reaped from the extraction of minerals often bypass most of the population, leaving them mired in poverty. Rural communities in particular bear the brunt of this poverty, as they lack access to basic resources and face limited opportunities for sustainable livelihoods. The cycle of poverty becomes a formidable foe, hindering progress and perpetuating a grim reality for countless Congolese families. Exploitation not only robs the DRC of its resources, but also disrupts the lives of its people, leading to widespread displacement. Armed conflicts fueled by the pursuit of mineral wealth force communities to abandon their homes, resulting in the loss of livelihoods and the tearing apart of the social fabric. The displaced often find themselves in overcrowded and inadequate conditions, struggling to meet basic needs and facing heightened vulnerability to disease and violence. Displacement becomes a poignant consequence of exploitation, amplifying the human toll on the most vulnerable members of society. The exploitation-driven economic downturns in the DRC deepen the challenges faced by its citizens, exacerbating poverty and compounding the difficulties of daily life. When multinational corporations prioritize profit over sustainable development, the national economy becomes increasingly fragile, leading to job losses and decreased opportunities for growth. Rural areas, lacking the infrastructure to weather economic shocks, experience the harshest repercussions, pushing communities into spirals of despair marked by rising levels of hunger, disease, and malnutrition. We will also discuss the impact on the economy in depth, so you understand how the economy that is driving the force of any nation is being affected. The human toll exacted by exploitation in the DRC demands urgent attention and collective action. International organizations, governments, and civil society must work in tandem to address the root causes of poverty, displacement, and economic downturns. Initiatives that prioritize sustainable development, equitable resource distribution, and the protection of vulnerable populations are essential in breaking the chains of exploitation and fostering a future where the well-being of the Congolese people is paramount. Coming back to the economic devastation, how has the West been a reason for the Congo's economic dilemma? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video, and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The Democratic Republic of Congo DRC, once a beacon of industrialization in Africa, now grapples with the devastating aftermath of past concessions exploitation. The exploitation of its resources, prolonged conflicts, and challenging operational conditions have cast a shadow over the nation's economic development. Prolonged conflicts and a challenging operating environment mark the DRC's journey towards economic devastation. Armed conflicts, fueled by competition over valuable resources, have ravaged the nation and disrupted economic activities. The difficult conditions for businesses and investors, including inadequate infrastructure and political instability, have further deterred industrial growth. The consequence is a nation that struggles to regain the economic momentum it once possessed, facing obstacles that hinder its development. Historically recognized as Africa's second most industrialized country, the DRC now grapples with a decline in industrialization. The exploitation of concessions and the disruptive impact of conflicts have led to the deterioration of key industries. Infrastructure, such as manufacturing plants and processing facilities, has suffered neglect, significantly reducing industrial output. The decline in industrialization not only hampers economic growth but also limits job opportunities and the overall advancement of the nation. The exploitation-driven economic downturns and the obstacles posed by long-term conflicts have collectively impeded the DRC's economic growth. The nation, rich in natural resources, struggles to translate its potential into tangible economic development. The adverse effects of exploitation have created a cycle of economic stagnation, hindering the implementation of sustainable development initiatives and trapping the DRC in a state of underdevelopment. But apart from the exploitation, is everything fine in Congo? Understanding the connection between conflict and exploitation is important to catch up with why the West is responsible for bad luck looming over Congo. In the heart of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Natural resources, including gold, diamonds, cobalt, and copper, have emerged as the economic lifeblood of the nation. However, the connection between the exploitation of these resources and the persistent conflicts that have plagued the country is undeniable. On the surface, the abundance of natural resources in the DRC should be a source of prosperity. However, these resources have become double-edged swords, with their exploitation fueling and sustaining conflicts rather than fostering development. Gold, diamonds, cobalt, and copper, which should contribute to the nation's economic growth, have instead become tools of discord, intensifying the struggle for control and dominance. The illicit trade of minerals, a consequence of unscrupulous practices by both local and international actors, has played a pivotal role in fanning the flames of conflict in the DRC. Armed groups, often with external support, exploit the resource-rich regions, engaging in illegal mining and trading activities to fund their operations. This connection between exploitation and conflict transforms the resources that could drive development into catalysts for unrest and instability. The connection between the West and the conflicts in the DRC is a complex and often contentious aspect of this narrative. Historical and contemporary evidence suggests that external forces, including Western interests, have played a role in driving and perpetuating conflicts to control valuable resources. The influence of multinational corporations, geopolitical interests, and exploitative trade practices has perpetuated a cycle where the DRC struggles to break free from the chains of conflict and instability. Exploitation in the DRC has become a vicious cycle, with the illicit trade of minerals contributing to many interconnected challenges. The profits from the exploitation rarely benefit the local population, perpetuating poverty. The armed conflicts fueled by resource competition lead to displacement, human rights abuses, and widespread suffering. As the cycle continues, the nation is trapped in a spiral of instability, hindering any meaningful progress toward peace and sustainable development. Addressing the connection between exploitation and conflict in the DRC necessitates a global commitment to accountability and responsible resource management. The international community, including Western nations and multinational corporations, must take proactive steps to ensure that their actions do not perpetuate conflict. Initiatives focused on ethical sourcing, transparency, and fair trade practices can play a pivotal role in breaking the chains of exploitation and fostering an environment conducive to peace and sustainable development. But how does the West easily exploit Congo? How do they weaken the roots of a resource-rich nation like Congo? In the search for the Democratic Republic of Congo's DRC, abundant wealth, resource exploitation has become synonymous with increasing militarization and violence. This grim reality unfolds as rebel groups, foreign armies, and local proxies become entwined in the quest for control over valuable resources, posing a severe threat to the civilian population. The vast wealth embedded in the DRC's natural resources, such as gold, diamonds, cobalt, and copper, is a powerful magnet for various armed actors. Rebel groups, foreign armies, and local proxies are drawn to the promise of financial gains through resource exploitation. This lure of wealth perpetuates the exploitation cycle and amplifies the militarization of regions rich in these valuable assets. Rebel groups operating in resource-rich areas of the DRC often directly engage in or benefit from resource exploitation. These groups employ exploitative tactics, including illegal mining and trade, to fund their operations. The revenue generated from these activities further fuels their ability to sustain armed conflicts, contributing to the ongoing instability that plagues the nation. The involvement of foreign armies in exploiting the DRC's resources adds another layer of complexity to the issue. Some nations deploy their forces to secure access to valuable minerals, effectively engaging in proxy warfare. This militarized approach not only exacerbates existing conflicts, but also deepens the vulnerabilities of the civilian population, caught in the crossfire of geopolitical interests and resource-driven conflicts. The militarization of resource-rich regions in the DRC poses a grave threat to civilian populations. Communities find themselves at the mercy of armed groups, facing violence, displacement, and human rights abuses. The exploitation-driven conflicts disrupt daily life, leaving civilians trapped in a cycle of fear and uncertainty. The militarization and violence further contribute to a humanitarian crisis, with innocent lives bearing the brunt of the quest for resource wealth. The militarization and violence linked to resource exploitation in the DRC undermine any prospects for sustainable development. Instead of contributing to economic growth and prosperity, the quest for wealth intensifies conflicts and hampers the nation's ability to build a stable and resilient society. The long-term consequences echo through generations, impeding progress and perpetuating cycles of poverty and insecurity. But considering how the exploitation has impacted Congo, are there any political implications of this or not? The involvement of foreign powers and multinational corporations in exploitation has deepened internal conflicts and exacerbated political instability. Wars driven by the pursuit of political dominance and control over mineral wealth, spanning from colonial times to the present, have resulted in a staggering death toll that surpasses 5.5 million. The link between political dominance and control over mineral wealth has been a recurring theme in the DRC's troubled history. Competing factions, backed by external powers seeking to secure access to valuable resources, have ignited wars that ravage the nation. Political instability becomes a byproduct of this scramble for power, hindering the establishment of a stable government that can effectively address the population's needs. The involvement of foreign powers and multinational corporations in the DRC's affairs continues to shape contemporary challenges. Geopolitical interests and economic motivations intertwine, perpetuating a cycle of exploitation that hinders the nation's progress. The DRC struggles to break free from external interference, with the interests of powerful entities often taking precedence over the well-being of the Congolese people. Many of us are familiar with the West consistently advocating for human rights, but doesn't this situation suggest the West itself may be involved in violating human rights in Congo? Throughout the history of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, exploitation and human rights violations have often gone hand in hand. This connection between taking advantage of resources and breaking international laws designed to protect people has caused much pain and sadness, and it continues to be a big issue today. Since colonial rule, the DRC has faced a constant challenge: the misuse of its natural resources, leading to actions that break the rules of how countries should treat their people. This harmful link has created a path of suffering for many in the country. From the days when foreign powers controlled the Congo during the colonial era to the current times, the DRC has seen its resources being taken advantage of by different groups. This exploitation ranges from minerals to other valuable materials that the country possesses. Exploiting the DRC's resources often results in actions violating international humanitarian laws. These laws are in place to ensure that people everywhere are treated fairly and with dignity. However, the desire to profit from the Congo's riches has led to practices that harm the well-being of its citizens. The sad truth is that the consequences of this connection between exploitation and human rights violations are long-lasting. Many people in the DRC continue to suffer due to these actions, and the cycle of exploitation and harm seems difficult to break. The link between exploiting natural resources and human rights abuses has left a trail of suffering and despair in the DRC. Families have been torn apart, communities have been disrupted, and individuals have had their basic rights taken away. Conjuring the scope of impact, which multinational companies are the ones accountable for the instability in Congo. Several big companies, such as Barclays Bank, De Beers, and Anglo-American, are facing accusations of playing a part in the ongoing instability in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. While some defend these multinational corporations, highlighting their role in boosting the economy and creating jobs, there are valid concerns about the adverse effects on the country's stability and human rights situation. But the proof tells otherwise. These major corporations, including Barclays Bank, De Beers, and Anglo-American, have been accused of contributing to the ongoing instability in the DRC. Their actions fuel conflicts and make it difficult for the country to achieve a stable and peaceful environment. Despite the potential for economic development, concerns persist about the negative impact of these corporations on the DRC's stability and human rights situation. The extraction and utilization of natural resources often lead to environmental degradation and social upheaval, causing harm to local communities. The key challenge lies in finding a balance between the economic benefits of multinational corporations and addressing the negative consequences on stability and human rights. Striking this balance requires careful consideration of their operations, social and environmental impacts. There is a growing call for transparency and accountability from multinational corporations operating in the DRC to address the concerns raised by critics. This involves ensuring their actions align with ethical standards and international laws, mitigating potential harm to the country and its people. Given the global nature of these corporations, international collaboration is essential. Governments, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and corporations must work together to establish guidelines that promote responsible business practices and protect the well-being of the DRC's citizens. Do you think what the West is doing in Congo is a human rights violation? If yes, why is no one talking about it, considering how largely this is impacting the Congo? In the comments section right below, let us know what Congo should do to get rid of these exploiting companies. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.